Continuing our message series on momentum, moving forward together. We're talking about what it looks like to begin a new chapter together as a church. We're talking about our need this morning, what we need in life. And what I particularly have in mind is what we need when we get stuck. Have you ever been stuck? Like really stuck. Like the type of stuck that you needed someone else to come along and help you get some momentum to get unstuck. When I think of getting stuck, this is what I think of. In May of 2015, one of Brittany's best friends decided that it was time for her to get married. We were all really excited and helping with the preparations, and she decided that she was going to have an outdoor wedding with no backup plan. Now, I've been down this road as a pastor a few times before, and I told her this was not a great plan. She proceeded anyway, because you don't mess with the bride in that zone, right? So everything seemed like it was coming together great. She went and found a church that had closed and bought pews so she could bring church outside. And man, it was just beautiful. We were setting this up and getting ready for the big day, and had a big tent for the reception out on a friend's farm. And then it rained. And I'm not talking about just a little bit of rain. I'm talking the heavens opened. And a monsoon came on to central Illinois. And suddenly, somebody had the unpleasant task of informing the bride that there would be no outdoor wedding. I was so grateful it wasn't me. I didn't want to tell her that. So things were rearranged, and the tent was changed from just being a reception tent to reception and ceremony, and suddenly the whole day changed. This tent with industrial-sized fans in it, because it was the end of May, and everybody thought it was going to be hot. Suddenly the fans never got turned on, and we needed blankets for the guests. Because not only was it a monsoon, it was like 40-something degrees and windy inside this tent. Everybody was wet. It still was a beautiful ceremony. We danced the night away at the reception. It was the only way we could keep warm. And I'm grateful there's no video of me dancing. And it seemed like we were out of the woods, that what has now come to be called Mudfest 2015 was going to be okay. But then we realized that we needed to leave. This was a problem. At this farm, we had parked on the homeowner's landing strip for his plant, a grass landing strip. People were stuck everywhere. It was a mess. No matter how hard they tried, they were digging deeper holes for themselves and deeper and deeper holes. They weren't going to get out. They were just totally stuck. And then I decided it was time for us to leave. And I went out, I surveyed the damage, and I thought to myself, I'm staying right here. No, that's not what I thought. I can do this. I'm the one who's not going to get stuck. Right? We were leaving on vacation the next day. We had rented a minivan for vacation, which never gets stuck at all. And I thought, I can do this. What I'm going to do differently from everyone else is instead of driving on the landing strip, I'm going to back it up into the tall grass behind the landing strip. And as long as I stay there, and as long as I keep some good momentum as I go and I don't slow down, I'm not going to get stuck. It was going really well. And then I saw it in front of me. A fence post. I had to slow down, which was the first thing I said I couldn't do. I had to try to weave around it, and that took me onto the landing strip. And pretty soon I was just like every other car out there. Stuck. And not just a little stuck, I was stuck like having to pay extra for the rental van kind of stuck. And it was not good. I had no idea what we were going to do. I was in a brand new suit, and I wasn't going to walk around and try to pull us out. Brittany was in heels from being in the wedding, so I couldn't really make her, do anything about it. So we kind of just sat there, stuck. Homeowner's son comes along with a big tractor, thank God. And he got under and he put a tow cable around the bottom of the van, and he pulled us all the way out to the road. We got to safety, and we threw mud behind us down the highway for like 15 miles, and we got unstuck. Sometimes in life, we get stuck, and we need someone else to come along the way to help us to get unstuck so we can continue along the journey. I think back to my first appointment, which is so hard to believe that was over 10 years ago. wow, the church that I was appointed to was stuck, unbelievably stuck. There were years of decline in the community, years of decline in the church. They knew that they wanted to thrive, they wanted to grow, but they didn't know how to do it. And leading into that appointment, I had all these thoughts in my head, wet behind the ears, fresh new preacher, that I could do all this, I could fix it instantly. And then I got there and realized I have no idea what I'm doing here. And I felt just as stuck as they did. So how do you get unstuck? Started reading books on evangelism and church growth, and every conference that I could go to, I signed up for, and a lot of them were less helpful than I thought they would be. And I started interviewing effective pastors that I knew had done this and finding out what they did. And we started praying for the Holy Spirit to empower us, and little by little it started to happen. New people started to come. All of us started going deeper on a relationship with Jesus, and before we knew it, we were unstuck. I'm willing to bet there have been moments in your life that you've been stuck and you've needed somebody else to come along and help you get unstuck. Do you know what's worse than being stuck? Being stuck and not knowing you're stuck. We can all point to moments in our lives where we keep trying and trying, but we're really just spinning our wheels, and we desperately need someone else to come along and help us to get unstuck, to help us to get that momentum back so we can keep on the journey. And as we continue to consider what it means to be a church that makes disciples who make disciples, meaning new, more disciples and better, more faithful disciples, what happens when we get stuck as individuals? We get stuck in our Christian life. What happens when a whole church gets stuck? How do we get unstuck? There's a great passage of scripture in the Old Testament that I think shows us a glimpse of what it looks like to get unstuck. It's in the Old Testament book of 2 Samuel, the 12th chapter. I'm going to read verses 1 through 10 and then skip down to verse 13. I think it'll be up on the screen if you want to follow along. And the Lord sent Nathan to David. He came to him and said to him, there were two men in a certain city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had very many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing but one little ewe lamb, which he had bought. He brought it up, and it grew up with him and with his children. It used to eat of his meager fare and drink from his cup and lie in his bosom, and it was like a daughter to him. Now there came a traveler to the rich man, and he was loath to take one of his own flock or herd to prepare for the wayfarer who had come to him. But he took the poor man's lamb and prepared that for the guest who had come to him. Then David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. He said to Nathan, as the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. He shall restore the lamb fourfold because he did this thing and because he had no pity. Nathan said to David, you are the man. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I anointed you king over Israel, and I rescued you from the hand of Saul. I gave you your master's house and your master's wives into your bosom, and I gave you the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would have added as much more. Why have you despised this word of the Lord to do what is evil in his sight? You have struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and have taken his wife to be your wife, and have killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. Now therefore, the sword shall never depart from your house, for you have despised me, and have taken the wife of Uriah to be your wife. Down to verse 13, David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Nathan said to David, now the Lord has put away your sin. You shall not die. This is God's word, and it is true. Let all who believe say amen. Amen. David was stuck. My sense is he probably didn't even know it, because he didn't see what was coming in Nathan's story. And why should he see this coming? David is God's guy. He's the one that God said of this guy right here, David, is a man after my own heart. It's a real rags to riches story if you follow David's story, starting in 1 Samuel all the way through. He rises from obscurity to become the king of Israel. In 1 Samuel 16, David, the youngest of Jesse's sons, is anointed to be king of Israel. And it's this beautiful passage because all of his older brothers were handsome, the word says. They were good-looking guys. They were strong. And David was kind of the run of the litter, to the point that his father didn't even bring him in from the field. Because there was no way that he would be the one chosen to be king. And it says that the Lord doesn't look at the outward appearance, he looks on the heart. And indeed, this one, the run of the litter, was the one that God was going to choose to be king of Israel. In 1 Samuel 17, we see this young boy David be the one to face down the Philistine champion Goliath. We all know that story, right? Everyone else is cowering in their boots because there's this really big guy Goliath out there, and he's taunting them every single day. But David goes out there and he says, hey, who's this big guy and who does he think he is to defy the armies of the living God? So he goes out there with not sword, with not all this great armor that they tried to give him. He goes out there with stones and a slingshot, and he strikes down Goliath. It's a great story. He continues to see God throughout his life. He follows God's ways, even through great trials like the current King Saul trying to kill him. Everything that David touched, though, turned to gold. It was prosperity for David. There was victory in battle. There was prosperity in his personal life. Eventually, Saul does die, and David reigns as king. And for the first time in a long time, God's people are reunited into one kingdom, and David reigns over a united Israel. David takes over Jerusalem, and he brings the Ark of God into Jerusalem. And as he dances before the Lord with all of his might, as he comes into Jerusalem, for the first time he gives the glory of God a permanent home, and places the Ark on Mount Moriah and makes plans for the first temple to be built. The prosperity in David's life was just so good. And if you flip back in 2 Samuel chapter 8, in verses 14 and 15, it says this. David put garrisons in Edom. Throughout all Edom he put garrisons, and all the Edomites became David's servants. And the Lord gave victory to David wherever he went. There's that prosperity. So David reigned over all Israel, and David administered justice and equity to his people. This is really good stuff happening in David's life, and David is really quick to not take all that glory for himself, but he gives it back to God. He knew that he didn't get pulled out of a shepherd's field by his own power, but he was pulled out of there by the mighty hand of God. In 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 18, it says, Then King David went in and he sat before the Lord and said, Who am I, O Lord God? And what is my house that you have brought me this far? He knows that he didn't do this on his own, and he turns that praise back to God. And it's not just talk for David. He really meant it. He wrote beautiful songs and prayers to God, and many of them have ended up in the Old Testament, what we call the book of Psalms. But then, and I'm not quite sure when it happened, but something changed for David. The last verse of 2 Samuel chapter 11 says, But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. Are we sure we're talking about the same guy? This guy who God said, This is a man after my own heart. The one who said, Who am I, O Lord my God? And what is my house that you are mindful of me? Now all of a sudden it says, The thing that David had done displeased the Lord. What is that? If you back up one chapter, 2 Samuel chapter 11, we read about the thing that David had done to displease the Lord. In chapter 11, things start falling apart for David. Even in the very first verse of the chapter. 2 Samuel chapter 11. In the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab with his officers and all Israel with him. They ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained at Jerusalem. So let's get this straight. The guy who God gives great victory to in battle, the one who everything he touches turns to gold, when all of the other kings go out in the springtime to do battle, this time David decides to stay back in Jerusalem. It doesn't make sense. Something has changed. David, this valiant leader, decides that he's going to be lazy just this time. And he's going to send someone else out to lead God's people into battle. And sometimes in our lives when we get stuck, especially when we get stuck in sin, it goes that way. Just like David's about to get stuck. It happens because we stop doing the things that we know please God and keep us close to God. David knew that God would give victory to him everywhere that he went, but he decides, I'm going to let someone else handle it. Verse 2. It happened late one afternoon, when David rose from his couch and was walking about on the roof of the king's house, not out and about where he was supposed to be, that he saw from the roof a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. David sent someone to inquire about the woman. It was reported, "This is Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite." So David sent messengers to get her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. Then she returned to her house. The woman conceived, and she sent and told David, "I am pregnant." So let's just walk through this here for a minute. While David is relaxing on his roof, not doing the thing that he was supposed to be doing, he sends people to find out about this beautiful woman that he sees bathing. That's not the initial problem, that he notices a beautiful woman bathing. It's what happens next. He sends somebody to find out about it because, I'm the king and there's always room for another wife, right? They come back and they tell him that she's already married. That should have been the end of the conversation right there. Should have stopped. But he thought, hey, I'm the king, I'll sleep with who I want to sleep with. So he does. Now, not only has he gotten lazy, he's let the power go to his head. Then he hears what throws him into overdrive, right? Because what's done in the dark is about to come to the light because she's pregnant. Whoa. What do I do now? It starts a chain of events that take David deeper and deeper into his sin and into his stuckness. You ever done that when you're stuck? You keep trying and trying to get out quickly and find a fast way out, and it actually ends up digging you deeper into your stuckness. We're going to see that happen with David very quickly. So he calls Uriah, her husband, to come back from the battle, and he hopes that Uriah will take advantage of his little unexpected shore leave and have a conjugal visit. But Uriah apparently has a bit of a sense of honor, and he decides that if his comrades don't get to go visit their wives, that he's not going to either. Good guy, big problem. I can see David in that moment saying, that's such a sweet sentiment at such a bad time. I really need this to happen. So David needs a new plan to get unstuck, because the first one didn't work. So he has Uriah over to dine with him and decides that he's going to get him drunk. Certainly he'll lose his sense of honor if he's had too much wine, because large amounts of alcohol always lead to a good plan for fixing a problem. Uriah, though, still ends up sleeping outside of the palace, and he doesn't go to his own home. This guy, in his sense of decency. So David sends Uriah back into battle. This is his last hope. He makes Uriah carry a letter instructing the leader Joab to put Uriah on the front lines, and when the battle gets hot, draw back from Uriah and let them kill him. He makes Uriah carry his own death order. And it happens. Uriah's killed. David has dug himself deeper and deeper. But in that moment, David thinks his problems are solved. It's all over. He takes Bathsheba into his home as one of his wives. She gives birth to a son. And hey, I've successfully covered up my sin. Or so he thinks. Because then comes that last verse of chapter 11, that haunting verse. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. He committed adultery. He committed murder. Just to say the very least. David's stuck. He's stuck in his own self-destructive behavior, and he's in a self-centered rut. Whether he's unwilling to admit it or if he's just plain unaware, David is stuck. And that's when God sends his trusted friend and prophet Nathan. Nathan's job is to help David get unstuck. So Nathan comes to him, he tells him the story that he knew was going to move David, because he knew it was going to kindle some righteous anger within David. Because David, even though he's stuck right now, was still that man after God's own heart. And he knew that David cared about justice. So he tells him a story about a man who commits a great injustice. A man who abuses his power against someone with no power. David's response is instant. This guy's got to pay. David's face is flushed with anger. This man deserves death. And that's when Nathan drops the bomb. David, you're the man. You're the man in my story. Nathan goes on to tell David what the consequences of his actions will be. But then he gives this message right from God's heart to David's heart. God says, look, I've given you everything. I've lifted you out of obscurity as a shepherd boy. I've made you shepherd over all of Israel. I've given you everything you have. And if that wasn't enough, I would have given you even more. But now Now you've gone and taken something that does not belong to you. It wasn't yours to take. I think Nathan is a really interesting character in the story. I mean, he knows that David has murdered someone who stood in the way of his cover-up. And now, God, you want me to go and confront him about this? Whoa, whoa, whoa. He's large, he's in charge, and you want me to go have a face-to-face with Don Corleone himself? Pass. Hard pass. Something incredible happens. Nathan goes, I'm sure with fear and trembling. It couldn't be easy to confront his friend and lay this out there, knowing, is he going to respond as my friend, or is he going to have me killed? But Nathan does what he's supposed to do, and he speaks that truth to David. David doesn't call the goon squad to come haul Nathan away. He doesn't make sure that Nathan goes to sleep with the fishes. He doesn't attack him. He doesn't provide an excuse for himself. In verse 13, he simply says, I have sinned against the Lord. That's the only response that David has. No excuse about how I'm the king, I'll do what I want to do. No lie to try to cover up what really happened. Simply, I did this. I got myself stuck. I think in that moment, David realized that what he really needed was someone to help him get unstuck. He learned something that his son Solomon eventually knew, that he wrote down in the book of Proverbs. And in Proverbs 27:6, Solomon wrote, well met are the wounds of a friend, but many are the kisses of the enemy. Yes, this hurt. It's painful to have your sin laid out bare in front of you, but Nathan was wounding David not to hurt him, but to provide for his healing. David realized that all of us get stuck, and we need someone to help us get unstuck. We all need that type of friend like Nathan was, or a group of friends that can help us to get unstuck when we get to those moments. For the founder of the Methodist movement, John Wesley, it looked like the Holy Club. And I have an artist rendering of the Holy Club. They don't look like any kind of club you've ever seen when it pops up there. They're not looking like they're having a real great time. Can we get that picture? Not that one. That's the black and white one?
Okay.
There we go. That's the Holy Club. Yeah. Holy Club started in 1729 when a group of friends decided to get together regularly to do the Christian life together. They didn't call themselves the Holy Club. It was actually a mocking title given by people who thought that they were too methodical in their approach to the Christian life, which, interestingly enough, was how they got another nickname, the Methodists. Neither of these were terms of endearment, but they were terms that Wesley ended up embracing. Many of the members of the Holy Club went on to be powerful leaders in the evangelical revival in the Church of England, and what we know as the First Great Awakening, and effects of their leadership were seen even into the Second Great Awakening. Many church historians point back to the Holy Club as being the root of Methodism and the Great Awakenings. It started there. The Holy Club started to gather together to pray, to examine their spiritual lives, to hold one another accountable, to study the Scripture together, to meet together regularly and watch over one another. They served together as well. They got out, they took food to the poor, they visited those who were in prison, they taught orphans to read. For each other, these guys were Nathan. They loved each other enough to ask the tough questions, and their questions were tough and real. They held one another accountable to the Christian life. It was holy friendship. And a holy friendship is when a friend helps a friend get closer to Jesus. When a friend helps a friend to become more like Jesus. It all goes back to making disciples who make disciples. If we want to be better, more faithful disciples, we all need a Nathan or Nathans in our life. We need friends who can say, I'm going to help you stay on the path, and you're going to help me stay on the path. We're going to keep each other from getting stuck, and when we do get stuck, we'll be there to help each other get unstuck. We need friends who can help us become more like Jesus. For John Wesley, that looked like the Holy Club. For me, that looks like my covenant group. That was the other picture that flashed up there. It's coming. This was last spring. We tried to get away and have a little retreat time. Last spring we went on retreat together to Our Lady of the Snow Shrine near St. Louis, and that's not a shrine. We snuck away together to a Cubs Cards game at Wrigley South. I mean Busch Stadium. And as you can see in the picture, I'm the only one who's gone on to perfection in my baseball fandom there. So it was a really great night because the Cubs won in thrilling fashion, and it was great to rub that in for a while. We've been together as a covenant group, which is just a fancy way of saying that we're holy friends to each other for almost 10 years now. We hold one another accountable to the Christian life. We talk almost every day. We have a group chat, and we have work questions and random things that we talk about. And we talk about family, how we can pray for one another. We get together in person once a month for breakfast, and it always ends up flowing into lunchtime as well. We pray for one another. We talk about Scripture together. We encourage one another in our life as Christians, in our lives as pastors, as husbands, as fathers. We allow each other the space to ask the tough questions, and we speak tough truths to each other as well. We do the Nathan and David thing. We know each other's struggles, and we know the places that each one can potentially get stuck, and we try to help one another avoid those spots. When someone does get stuck, the rest of the group is there to help them get unstuck. After 10 years of building trust in this, I would lay down my life for these guys, and I know that they would do it for me too. It was really awkward at first, but we put a lot of time into building trust together to the point that I know when they speak a hard truth to me, it's because they love me, not because they're trying to get me. Accountability is something we need, but unfortunately, it's become a foreign concept to the Christian life. We talk about the need for accountability for politicians and for leaders to be held accountable, for even institutions to be held accountable, but what about me? What about us? Somebody needs to hold us accountable to the Christian faith that we profess. So who's a holy friend to you? Who's a Nathan for you? Who's willing to speak a hard truth into your life? You need that person. You need those persons. We all do, because we all get stuck, and we need somebody or somebodies to help us get unstuck. We need someone who can help us get the momentum back for the journey. As United Methodists, this is our heritage. We've been shaped by what came out of that original Holy Club. In the early days of the Methodist movement in America, the circuit riders came around, they gathered people together, and they preached the gospel. They told these stories that we were created by God to be in relationship with Him, but our sin has caused us to be stuck outside of that relationship with God. But Jesus died and was raised to get us unstuck. And people responded in great numbers to that message. They gave their lives to Jesus. And while it's true that there were others outside of the Methodist movement who were preaching the same kind of message, there was something that made the Methodists different. One, we had circuit riders. So that meant you had a pastor that was riding a station of churches and mission stations to preach at. Sometimes a circuit rider would have up to 30 churches. If I, as your pastor, had 30 churches to get to, how often do you think you would see me? Not very often. So the work of the Christian life was left to the people to do together. So before the circuit rider would go, they would organize people into classes, what they call classes or bands. Before I leave, before I head off to my next preaching station, I'm going to put you in a group of other people who have had similar experiences and who have started this Christian journey, and you're going to watch out for each other. You're going to be holy friends and watch over one another in love. You're going to study together. You're going to pray together. You're going to encourage each other. You're going to ask each other the tough questions. You're going to keep each other on this journey with Jesus. And when one of you gets stuck, you're going to help each other get unstuck. Who does that for you in your life? Who's your Nathan? Who can speak hard truth into your life? Because it's not a matter of if you're going to get stuck. It's a matter of when you're going to get stuck. And you just might need somebody to help you get unstuck. You might think, yeah, I need somebody like that. I need to be in a group like that. But how do you get to that point where you're all comfortable enough to receive hard truth, to speak hard truth? My friend Casey, who's the middle one in our group there, he's a pastor in Champaign, and he's the wordy one among us, and often too smart for his own good. He says that there are 5 things needed for holy friendship, and he's right. 1, relationship. Do I know you? That's the relationship question. Do I know you? Do you know me? Do we have a relationship together? Because strangers watching over one another is not going to work. Second, you need trust. The question here is, do you love me? Can I know that you're not going to hurt me? We took time to build trust in our covenant group to the point that I know that they're not trying to hurt me, but they're trying to help me along the Christian journey. 3, goal. Where are we going? What's the point of us being together? What's the end goal of our Christian journey together? 4, courage. Can I speak the truth in love? Nathan needed courage to go and do that, right? It is hard to speak truth into someone's life, especially when you think that they might come out of a bag on you. It takes courage. And 5, we need what David had, and that was humility. Can I receive the truth in love? Am I going to come out of that bag? Am I going to respond with my ego? Or I'm going to trust in humility that this is for my good? Listen, we're not meant to do life, let alone the Christian life alone. We're built for relationship. And we need these kind of holy friendships. We need some Nathans in our lives, and we need to be Nathans for one another. And we need that accountability and that grouping and that holy friendship that only those within the church can provide. Those who are on the same journey with that same goal in mind. As we move forward together, we have to focus on recovering this Wesleyan hallmark of watching over one another in love. Whether it's through your Sunday school class or a small group or a home group or some other affinity group you have that you all get together, hang out at the pool, fine, talk to each other about Jesus. We have to do this together. We have to learn to trust and love one another enough that we're willing to go beneath the surface and be be Nathan for one another. We as the church, this is who we are. We're united in the love of God and the grace of Jesus and in the power of the Holy Spirit as we participate in the church together. Oh, that we would love one another enough to help each other get unstuck. That we would love the church enough to help it get unstuck. That we would love one another enough to ask the tough questions. That we would love one another enough to speak the truth in love. So that all may grow closer to Jesus. So that our church might move with great momentum and not be stuck. So that we may transform the world because we're united together and watching over one another in love. That the world might say, oh, those Christians at Tremont United Methodist Church, how they love one another. And that's a love that transforms the world and each one of us. We're united together not just because we sit in the same pews. Not just because we hold to the same teachings and doctrines of the Christian faith, though that's important. We're united together because Jesus has woven us together and called us to love one another, to speak the truth in love, to watch over one another in love. Find your Nathan. Find your David that you need to be Nathan for. So when we do that, our belief becomes even stronger, and there's no stopping what we can do. Let's pray.